Chillers, welcome back to my channel. So it is Wednesday, which means it is spooky day. So today I am going to be reading stories about children with their imaginary friends. Now the question is, are they imaginary friends or ghosts or demons? We'll find out. So let's just jump to it. Number 1, the punishment. I was 17 and babysitting a friend of the family's 6-year-old. I was 17 and babysitting a friend of the family's 6-year-old. There we go. He'd been in bed a couple of hours and I just peeked in to check in on him. He wasn't in the bed when I checked, so I opened the door wider. When I did, I saw he was standing in the corner, facing the wall. Then the creepiest thing ever. I asked him what he was doing, and all he did was turn around, smile, put his fingers to his lips as if to say, shh. I asked him again what he was doing, and all he says is, leave us. It's the punishment. That's weird. Number 2, Betsy. I only tell this story because I hope my family is screwing with me, but maybe not. My mom left us when I was 5, and my dad worked a lot and went out drinking more nights than not, so no one kept a good eye on my sister and me. We had to move into a cheaper house, and I made friends with a girl in our new neighborhood named Betsy. She showed me where the train tracks and the broken down tree house were in the woods by our house. She was the only friend I had, and I remember her clearly. We played in the woods, rode bikes, had slumber parties, normal girl stuff. I started seeing less and less of her when I got older, and she eventually moved away, close to the school she went to. I was over at my dad and stepmom's a couple years ago and told a story about her, and my dad laughed at me and told me Betsy was imaginary, to which I corrected him, no, she wasn't. She even came with us to my aunt's house for Thanksgiving one year. My dad got serious and said, no, there was never anyone there. You would just go up to your room and play and talk to yourself when Betsy came over. And my sister agrees with him and makes me text my aunt, who also says, no, you brought an imaginary friend to Thanksgiving that year. Now I would let it go and just chalk it up to the mind of a child is amazing, but a couple of things freaked me out. 1, I very clearly remember her, what she looked like, how she sounded. And I even have a very vague recollection of her room, not her house, just her room. And number 2, where did I go when I went on sleepovers? I asked my dad this question and he tells me it's the reason he doesn't drink anymore. Oh, I have chills. That is so weird. Where would you go? Number 3, the Creeper Man. My son, from the age of 3, always tells me about the Creeper Man who lives in my mom and dad's bedroom. He brings it up after he visits them. I made the mistake of once asking what he looks like. My son said, oh, he doesn't have a face. No, that's not an imaginary friend. Number 4, the Captain. A parent of one of my students told us in a meeting that she was concerned because her son, 7 years old, talked about an invisible ghost who would talk to him and play with him in his room. He said the ghost was called the Captain and was an old white guy with a beard. The kid would tell his mom that the Captain told him when he grows up, his job will be to kill people, and the Captain would tell him who needed to be killed. The kid would cry and say he doesn't want to kill when he grows up, but the Captain tells him he doesn't have a choice and he'll get used to killing after a while. I was always creeped out working with that student after that. That poor kid. Number 5, Kelly. When my daughter was 3, she had an imaginary friend named Kelly, who lived in her closet. Kelly sat in a little rocking chair while she slept, playing with her, etc. Typical imaginary friend stuff. Anyway, fast forward 2 years later, the wife and I are watching the new Amityville, the one with Ryan Reynolds, and our daughter walks out right when dead girl goes all black-eyed. Far from me disturbed, she said, "That looks like Kelly." "Kelly who?" we say. "You know, the dead girl that lived in my closet." Nope, that's gross. Number 6. The Boy. My folks' farm surrounded a cemetery, and my dad and my niece were walking down there. My niece 4 looks up and says, "What's that boy doing up in the tree?" There was no boy, but she insisted there was and could describe him. But nobody else saw this boy but her. It was a ghost. Let's see. Number 7. Jessica. A little after I was born, my sister Julia had an imaginary friend named Jessica. She was Julia's friend for a long time when things started to get a little weird. At first, my parents shrugged it off as a normal occurrence, but after a while they began to believe that our house was haunted. One night, as my parents put me, about 1 year old, to sleep, I began to cry and point at the corner. My mom was still in there, began to try to comfort me, but I continued to cry and point at the same corner. All of a sudden, my sister walks into the room, points at the corner, and yells, "Jessica, stop it!" Immediately, I stop crying, and Julia says like it's completely normal that sometimes Jessica likes to put on scary masks and scare people. My mom, who's understandably freaked out, stammers to my sister, "Tell Jessica that if she can't play nice, she can't play here at all." A couple weeks go by, and Julia tells my mom that her eyes turn green when she is mad, and her voice gets deeper. My mom didn't know how to respond to this, and just said, "Okay." Eventually, Julia outgrows her imaginary friend and stops playing with her. A year and a half later, my little sister Abby begins to talk. She then goes on to tell us about her friend that no one can see. She then tells my mom about how her eyes turn green when she is upset. I remember this distinctly because she dropped a pan and it scared me. She asked Abby what her name was, and she said, "Jessica." It's not an imaginary friend. Number 8. I'll read 2 more after this. Number 8. Not a parent, but I do have a story about my little cousin and his imaginary friend. First off, let's get into details. My aunt and uncle had just moved into a new house in Orlando, Florida. I'll move this over here. In Orlando, Florida, and my cousin never spoke to this imaginary friend before they moved. Let's call my cousin Kay. I go to their house one day while on vacation because I live in New York, and I'm pretty close to my little cousin because he used to live across the street from me, and I treated him like my brother. He was about 6 years old when this happened, and it still gives me chills. I'm sleeping at their house for like a week, and I get this weird vibe coming from their place. There's a feeling of anxiety. I guess I could say anxiety. I really don't have anything else to compare it to. Would always be heightened at around 3 in the morning, because I always woke up to my little cousin next to my bed in the attic. Attic was remodeled and turned to a guest bedroom, and he would always tell me about his friend Maury. Naturally, I was freaked out by it, especially since it was always around the same time at night. On the fourth night, I asked his parents about it, and they told me they've never experienced anything like that with him, and decided to ask him about it. He said he had no idea what they were talking about. Come the next night, 3 a.m., I try to have a conversation with him. He keeps repeating 3 words, "Why'd you tell?" over and over again, until I tried to talk to him, and he started telling me about how Maury would appear in his dreams at night and eat dinner with the family when they were at the table. I asked him how he got to meet Maury, and he told me that Maury came up to him and asked him if he could come inside. And he was always a very polite kid, and he said, "Yeah, sure, come in." That's when Maury started to talk to him and would be by his bedside at night talking to Kay. Kay said he enjoyed Maury's company and it made him feel safe. I told his parents the next day and they got pretty scared. They thought I was making it up and didn't believe me. The next night, in my final night there, I heard some faint thumping under my bed, and at this point, I'm scared. But I built up some courage and peeked under my bed to find my little cousin there, and these are the last words I heard before I got out of the house. I'm protecting you from Maury. He said he can't trust in you and needs you gone. Maury won't hurt me if I protect you. I swear I ran faster than I have ever ran before. I made it at least 3 blocks down before my aunt and uncle started chasing after me and told me to stop. They asked me what happened and I didn't believe me because when we went back upstairs, Kay was in his bed and sound asleep. I went back home the next day. Fast forward a few years. I asked Kay if he remembered any of this or of Maury, and he told me he had no idea what I was talking about, and I left it at that. I've never told anyone besides his parents about this until now. That is a ghost. Maury can't trust you? Buddy, that's a ghost. Number 9. Scotty. Back in elementary school, had to be about age 6 or 7, I was close friends with this really socially awkward kid named Andrew who had just moved in from out of state. He used to sit alone before my friend and I introduced ourselves and just talk ever so quietly to himself, but he always appeared to be engaged. But he always appeared to be engaged during the conversations, if you will. The first and only time that I actually went over to his house, I had my friend tag along, and we were both going to be spending the night there. Well, the whole day went by, and it was all good. It was pretty fun. Andrew seemed different at home, a bit more normal, comfortable. Well, when we were going to sleep, I remember lying there in their basement/bedroom. Andrew was across the room on a couch, and my other buddy Ryan was asleep on a few feet away from me on the floor. Andrew started making these eerie noises, like a high-pitched but mellow scream, almost like a tea kettle. But then he sits up, and I can only see his outline with how dark it is. But he stands up, still letting the screeching noise out, and I just see his outline walking towards me. So I kick Ryan awake, and he sits up, and both of us just freaked out at this point. Andrew walks until he's nearly stepping on us and just sits down and slowly lets the screech die out. Ryan and I look at each other, not sure what to do, and Andrew just grabs Ryan's arm and then mine. He was squeezing them like he was trying to crush it. And in a disturbing low voice he says, "Scotty wants you both to leave." I rip my arm away, and so does Ryan, and Andrew stands up again and just stood there laughing, super high-pitched, staring at us. We both got up, and I just suggest going to Andrew's mom's room to wake her up. Before we even take a step, Andrew just screams at the top of his lungs, like a horror movie, like a person in a horror movie. On hearing the scream, his mom comes sprinting through the house and down the stairs and turns all the lights on. We couldn't tell in the dark, but Andrew ripped his arms up with scratches and he looked all around pale and just not right. His mom laid him on the ground, learn some grammar, people, and held him down and was trying to speak over his screams, and she was saying things like, "Scotty isn't real, Andy, you're okay." And she turns to us and tells us to head upstairs and put our coats on so she can take us home. We didn't talk to Andrew at school for the next couple of weeks, but when we asked him about it, he said, "It's okay, now you won't see Scotty anymore, no one will." Needless to say, that was the end of that, and we never talked to him again. Scratching up his arms, that is a sign of a gay man. Last one, number 10, Mr. Man. I've been living in the same house I grew up in my entire life. When I was little, around 5 or 6, I used to sleep in my parents' room because I was scared to sleep alone in my room. One night, I woke up and there was a man standing in the corner wearing all black with a shaved head, big eyes, sad mouth, and big ears. He just stood there looking at me from the corner with his hands in his pockets. I closed my eyes out of fear and drift off to sleep. I wake up again about 15 to 20 minutes later, and the man is now standing at the foot of my bed looking at me. His face was expressionless and kind of sad. I remember feeling scared and sad at the same time. I closed my eyes again, and when I opened them, he was gone. When I was around 8, I started calling him Mr. Man. This would happen about 2 times a week, every week until I turned 11. I started to sleep in my own room at about the age of 9. Embarrassing, I know. And Mr. Man would still show up. However, when I turned 15, he stopped. This was around the time that my grandfather, Sammy, passed away, and at the time, I thought the two were connected. I remember telling my mom about what had been going on shortly after the funeral, maybe a couple days to a week, and she had taken me to a therapist and got evaluated and all that stuff. All they found was I had ADD, high ADD and ADHD, no signs of schizophrenia, which my mom was very scared of, as my father's mother was paranoid schizophrenic. I went to see Mr. Man for another 4 years. Man, this is a long one. When I turned 18, though, I started noticing weird things around the house. The TV would turn on, or the volume would change rapidly. Doors would open and close, and I noticed our animals started to act weird. My dog Flower would bark at the hallway every now and then, or she would get up from my bed and stare at the doors with ears perked up. Our cats would get puffed up out of nowhere and hiss at nothing. I would hear footsteps walking by my room in the middle of the night. I thought it was my dad walking to the bathroom, as it's right next to my room, but as I got up to see who it was, the bathroom door was open and the light off. I checked my parents' room and both were in bed. I'm 20 now and still living with my parents as I'm going to a local college. Just about a year ago, he showed back up. It was in the morning around dawn, and I heard my door open. I thought it might have been my dad or something, but he would usually shut the door once he saw I was still asleep. When I noticed the door wasn't shut, I woke up and turned to see a silhouette of a man looking throughout the crack in the door. At first I thought it was my dad and asked him if it was him, but didn't get a reply. It wasn't my dad. It was Mr. Man. This time he had a hat on. I know it was him because I noticed the big ears and eyes. He just stayed there looking at me for a good 5 minutes. I remember when I noticed, I said, "Been a while, mister," and this was the first time I heard him speak. I remember he smirked and said, "It has, hasn't it?" His voice was deep and low, like James Earl Jones. Then the door slammed and he was gone. Weird stuff happens all the time. My dad is just now starting to admit something weird is happening. Just last week we talked about it, and he says he used to hear whispering at night and footsteps. Oh, buddy. That is a ghost. It's not an imaginary friend. Especially if you're 20. Alright, well, there you guys go. That was the imaginary friend. Excuse me. The imaginary friend stories. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up so I know. I will leave a link to this in the description below, because there's still more on here, and you can go off and read some by yourself. You can click my bubble to subscribe to my channel, and you can click here to see my last video, and I will see you guys on Friday. Peace out, chillers.